Well, guys, it's now 5 p.m. in the UK. This is the presentation I know a lot of you guys have been really looking forward to. We're very proud to announce we have Steve Lucas presenting the next presentation for the next hour. Just some brief housekeeping once again. The format will be Steve will give his presentation for 45-50 minutes. There will be no interruptions during the presentation. By all means, do send questions along the way. Outside of that, we'll be putting questions back to Steve for the last 7 to 8 minutes. And I know all you guys know Steve already, but for those who don't know or need a recap, Steve is the Executive Vice President of SAP's Global Database and Technology Division, the D&T division. Steve is responsible for the entire D&T portfolio, which includes database, data warehousing, information management, middleware, and cloud technologies. Now, this presentation is about new signals in the age of big data. So with that said, we're going to pass over to you, Steve.
First and foremost, just let me introduce myself. So Steve Lucas, as you were told, I'm the Executive Vice President of our database and platform organization. Most recently, and one of the things that I'll bring to the conversation today is I was a co-chairman of the Tech America White House Commission for Big Data. So this was a nonpartisan commission that got together and made a specific set of recommendations around big data, including what is it, how to deal with big data for the U.S. federal government. So I'll bring a few of those thoughts and comments to the conversation as well today. But nonetheless, it is a pleasure to virtually speak with all of you. But before we get to the topic of big data, I want to talk about this concept of how we run our businesses today. And I promise you I will relate this back to big data in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to talk about a couple of things. First and foremost is balance sheets and income statements, those two particular financial reports. So did you know that the modern day balance sheet versus income statement, so if you look at the balance sheet, the modern day one is somewhere in the neighborhood of around 50 to 60 years old. And the income statement, the modern day income statement, is over 100 years old. Now, why would I bring up the topic related to big data of an income statement report? Why would I do that? Well, the reason is actually quite simple. It's because I believe that these people, these are a bunch of guys from 100 years ago. That was the best picture that I could come up with at the time for that. You should try Googling that. These people would absolutely be adept and competent in a boardroom today. As long as they were looking at an income statement or a balance sheet, they would recognize the modern day version of it because they were invented when these people were alive. They would be great members of the board of directors, which is kind of scary because if you think about it, and this is where we're going to get back into the big data topic, hasn't the world changed? I think it has, especially over the last 100 years, yet we still use the same KPIs you'll find on any income statement and any balance sheet to effectively run our business from the top down. In other words, if what you're doing at your company doesn't contribute to the balance sheet or it doesn't contribute to the income statement, a lot of times it's not deemed valuable. But think about the fascinating point of view that the modern world that we live in brings. We have things like Facebook and Twitter. And so I'm going to talk about this for a minute in the context of two hypothetical companies. Now, these two companies are makers of widgets. And the company on the left hand, income statement and balance sheet, but they actually share with you their analysis of what their customers say about their products online. So in other words, they provide sentiment analysis and feedback from their customers, good or bad. They provide transparency to you around what customers are saying. Here's the question. Which company would you invest in? Would you invest in a company that has a great income statement and balance sheet but no insight whatsoever into what their customers think about them? Or would you invest in the company that has a great income statement and balance sheet and they are totally dialed in to what their customers are saying about them? My point is this. There are measures, there are what I would call signals in all of this noise that exists today that are just waiting for us to run our companies or help us run our companies more efficiently and effectively. And I'm going to share a personal experience with you that totally transformed the way I think about this one consumer electronics company. So It's not quite so recent now. It's becoming more in the past, but I purchased a Bluetooth headset. And I've told this story before, but it's worth sharing again. And, you know, being somewhat technical, I pride myself on the ability to competently pair a Bluetooth headset with my iPhone. Anyone should be able to do that. And so I went about the activity of charging up the Bluetooth headset and trying to get it to pair. Well, it turns out after hours and hours and hours of effort, I could not do it. And I tweeted, unhappily so, basically stating that this product sucks. I couldn't come up with a better description at the time. I was not happy about it. What transpired within the next hour from that tweet absolutely blew my mind. What transpired within the next hour was I got first a tweet back from the manufacturer of that product, of which I replied directly. And then I gave them my email address, and they sent me an email, and then they asked for my cell phone number, and they called me. And I was on the phone, and in less than 5 minutes had my problem resolved. Not because I decided to call the manufacturer, but because they were listening to me. Now, I will tell you that that one act turned my negative rant on a tweet into dozens of positive raves, dozens of tweets to people saying, wow, this company is on the ball. Now think about that within the context of your own customers. The question is this: are you dialed into what they are saying? And do you have a model or a business or analytics that enable you to sift through all of the noise and find the signals that matter to your company? And if you do, that's great. But I'm thinking that most companies still need some help wading through the massive amounts of data that are out there. And SAP absolutely has a way that we can help you dig through all of this noise to find the signals that truly matter. And the bottom line is that finding those new signals in all of this noise, in this age of big data we live in, will help you transform your company from a balance sheet and income statement driven company to a company that is driven by a complete set of new signals as well as the old, but enable you to outperform your competition, which is ultimately why we're all on this call today. And if you look at traditional financial metrics, the problem with most of them is they're backward looking. We want to find out what happened, or we look at these reports and they'll tell us what happened yesterday or 6 months ago or 2 years ago. And the reality is that the world that we live in, even if you're looking at data from 2 years ago, is radically different today than it was 2 years ago. Think about the size of the number of people. Just 2 years ago, Facebook had around 500 to 600 million people on Facebook. Today, over 1 billion people on Facebook. That's a radical shift. If you look at the number of Twitter users today versus 2 years ago, there's hundreds of millions of people using Twitter, versus 2 years ago, there were just a few tens of millions using Twitter. The amount of data, and I hate to harp on the social side of this because it's not just the social side of it, it's sensor data, it's the unstructured, the list goes on and on. But it truly is overwhelming. But the bottom line is this, is that your metrics, your new signals that you are going to run your company for the future have to be forward-looking. You have to be able to not just guess, but actually have insight into not just what did someone buy from my company last year, but what might they buy tomorrow. You have to be forward-looking, and not just what might they buy tomorrow, but here's the most important part. How did they feel about their purchase? That last one is extraordinary, and we'll talk a little bit more about that last one in a moment. But the point is that if you just tackle big data for the sake of big data, which is I just want to be able to tell my friends when I go home on the weekend so they think I'm cool that I have a big data solution, or I have Hadoop and I get a fist bump from a friend, that's not why you tackle big data. You tackle big data because you're ultimately hoping that there are golden nuggets, special new signals in all of that noise that will create competitive advantage for your organization. And those metrics need to be forward-looking, not backward-looking. Now, if you look at the types of data and the volumes of data, like where does it come from, and that's what this slide here is for, is to kind of take a look at where the heck did all of this data come from? That's the really big question, right? Well, like, what the heck happened? And if you look back over, and we'll take a look at a timeline in a moment, but if you look back over the last few years, there's just been this massive explosion in unstructured data. Pick something, documents, PDFs, whatever that may be. Sensor data, unbelievable. Facebook, Twitter, the list goes on and on. Sensors. It's this unbelievable amalgam of all of this information. And oh, by the way, structured data is by far the smallest part of the globally available data set to you today. What that means is that if you can't handle unstructured or semi-structured data, if you can't glean intelligence from that, you're missing out on what most of the data is out there. That's unbelievable. So it's amazing to me that most companies still exist in a model where running a report off of their transactional system is like their idea of a breakthrough. When in reality, what they should be doing is looking at, and here's a great example, warranty information. If you're a manufacturer and you provide a warranty, why you would not be using social, not just to see what people say about your product, but use social data to identify early or potential problems that are developing within your user base and track that back from tweets on a social network or comments on a social network, track it back to where products were sold, but then go one step further and track it back through supplier data to where they were manufactured. And then add in weather and other global events that may have affected quality in your manufacturing process. The point is this, is that we have to think globally when it comes to end-to-end data analysis. And we cannot be so myopic. We cannot just focus on building reports or dashboards based on what our ERP system says. So that's pretty amazing when you think about the types of data. Now, SAP has an interesting point of view in terms of how we think about big data. We think about big data from 3 vantage points or vectors, and you're going to hear a lot of V's here for the next little bit, vantage points and vectors. We talk about velocity, volume, and variety of data. And what I mean by that is really quite simple, is that big data really has 3 core characteristics. There's possibly a 4th, which is validity, but that really doesn't make, whether data is valid or not, which I'm a big believer in making sure that you work with valid and accurate data, but whether data is valid or not doesn't necessarily affect the size of it. Velocity, variety, and volume have huge, huge impacts on big data. And so here's the way that you can think about identifying or classifying big data. First of all is the velocity. In other words, how quickly is this data coming at me? And how quickly do I need to distribute or analyze that data for kind of store and then pass that data out for analysis to other people? So it's how quickly is it coming in? How quickly does it need to go out? That's the velocity of data. And if you think about sensor data streaming off of smart meters or cell phone data, position data getting streamed, every 30 seconds off of your cell phone back to your telco provider. That is a lot of data coming at you very, very quickly. Now, if you want to go to the extreme, telemetry data or medical device data can also be very, very high velocity data. Certainly, online transactions can be high velocity data. Now, if you contrast that with kind of the volume of information, and it's a little difficult to do because we're not in a big room with a whiteboard, but I think it's important to understand that the volume of data can have a dramatic effect in terms of how you think about it. So think about this for a moment. Wherever you're sitting listening to this webinar right now, your cell phone is sending out a ping every 5 seconds to 30 seconds to your telco provider saying, I am in this location, and it's giving a GPS signal, telling them what wireless antenna you're connected to in their cell network, etc. Now, if you multiply that by how many people are listening to this webinar or how many people are even in the city or the building that you're in, that's a tremendous amount of data. But the question is this, is it valuable data? Well, it might not be valuable because in the sense that if you stay in the same spot for an hour and your phone has reported for the last hour every 5 seconds that you're in the same spot, that's not tremendously valuable data. Maybe the data point for when you got there and the data point when you left. But all of the data in between maybe not so valuable. So you have to really think through how much of this data is worth storing and what do I do with it. Now, if you think about transaction data for a minute, so like ERP transaction information, that is tremendously valuable data, but much less volume compared to cell phone signals, for example, or sensor data. So, you know, it's amazing how the different volumes of information can affect how much you would value your information as well. And then the last is variety. And of course, this simply gets back to the point that I talked about earlier, which was you need to think about what kind of data I'm dealing with. Is it structured, semi-structured? Is it unstructured? Do I want to derive meaning from this data or not? There's just so many things that come with variety of data. But my point to you is this, is that when you're thinking about the data inside of your organization, I'd encourage you to think about the value, volume, and the volume, velocity, and variety of data. Because all three of those characteristics, anytime you sit down with anybody, me, anyone, and talk about big data, it's good to have a sense for the different kinds of data that you have, variety-wise. How quickly is it coming at you? How quickly do you need to share it with others? And how big is it? Not just that it's a lot of data. But on the subject of a lot of data, now this is quite interesting. If you look at the amount of information that's generated globally, so in a given year, we're generating right now this of course will increase, but we're generating about 1.8 zettabytes this year, roughly, give or take a few petabytes. What's a few petabytes between friends? But we're generating about 1.8 zettabytes of data this year globally. Now, if you think about how many iPads it would require, 32 gigabyte iPads, to store all of that information, it would require 57.5 billion, with a B, iPads to store that amount of information, which I'm sure Apple would be fine with, but it's $34.4 trillion, the cost of all of those iPads, which is more than the combined GDP of all of these fantastic and amazing countries. That's unbelievable if you think about just the raw amount of information that is out there and the raw amount of information that's being generated. Now think about this. A good chunk of that data, at least 50% this year, I know it's more, if you asked a company like Cisco, they would tell you it's more, is video data. So remember, we talked about all of those different data types. We talked about structured, semi-structured, unstructured, et cetera, et cetera. What about video? Does your company even have a plan, or your organization, for gleaning intelligence out of video data? In other words, it's easy to read a tweet, and it's easy to figure out whether that's positive or negative. But how about a YouTube video? What if someone posts a rant about your company on YouTube? How would you even find it? And those are huge questions to ponder as we think about how we tackle big data. So, you know, there's two parts to this slide here. One is how the heck did we get here? And the second part is, where are we going, or what's next? What's beyond big data? Now, for me, in terms of how we got here, I think it's simple. I mean, we're just on this roller coaster ride, this rocket ship going up, where everything is building upon itself. You know, you had client server that gave rise to the web, where everyone could have ubiquitous access at home to the internet. You had this explosion in B2B and B2C with you know, the massive increase in transactions. And then just this crazy growth in mobile devices, especially with smart phones. And then, of course, the explosion in social. While, you know, Facebook was born back in 2006, it's really just exploded the last 4 or 5 years. And all of that has contributed in some part to this topic that we're talking about now, this big data topic. But the real thing, and this is very interesting from my point of view, is I mean, we're obviously not going to stop at big data, and the question is, well, what's next? Well, before we get there, I think there's a couple alarming things that you should be aware of. First of all, is that the reason big data is going to continue to get bigger is because there are more people on the planet that have access to phones. They have a phone than they do safe drinking water. Think about that. One of the most abundant things on the planet, water, granted a lot of it's salt water, but more people have access to a mobile phone than they do safe drinking water. That is an unbelievable statement about the world that we live in and where we are headed. Because last time I checked, fresh water doesn't generate more data, but cell phones do. And secondly, is if you look at Facebook, you know, they've crossed this billion user mark globally. Now, as I kind of joke around, the moment that Facebook reports more users than there are people on the planet, we know that they're lying to us. But the reality is that we are not looking back at this point. We are in a time, in a place where, you know, from my point of view, there is no going back. This is the way it is. And we obviously need to get our arms around how we solve this. Now, everybody asks me, well, Steve, what's next? What's beyond big data? And I believe that big data in real time is next. And what I mean by that is it's really interesting that we can look at big data, but if you can't act on it quickly, if you can't identify when a customer's finger twitches or they're not happy, and then take action on it, then what good is knowing about it? And that's really what I believe is next in the world of big data. So here's the big question is, what critical new signals are we missing? What do we not know about? And this, in my mind, this is more or less the money slide to me. What do we not know about? What are we not thinking about? So I'm going to, just for a few minutes, take a little bit of latitude with everybody on the call, not too much, I hope, and just share with you my point of view on what new signals you might be missing. For example, now we'll start with something really quite simple. We'll take the example of social data. So if you think about what traditionally social data is used for today, you are using social data for things like sentiment analysis on your brand. So are customers that purchase our product saying good things about our brand or bad things about our brand? The real question is this: is that all? Is that all you can use social for? And I mean, clearly the answer is no. There's more that you can use social data for than just how does a customer feel about your brand. You can absolutely use social as a predictor. Now, what I want to talk about is how you can use social in a predictive context. So I have this slide up here that talks about the fact that big data plus real time, analyzing the data in real time, is what ultimately leads you to identifying new signals. And what I mean by that is really simple, is that your job is to be able to bring the big data, the data that your company wants to go after, whether that's jobs data, housing start data, social data, weather data, internal sales data, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But your job is to bring that information, make it accessible to your company, and then enable the analysis of that data in real time so that you can, and I'll apologize for the term, but I'll explain it, so that you can be wrong more quickly. You want to fail and be wrong as quickly as you can when you identify what you think is a new signal for your business. You want to be able to analyze it, see if it contributes to or has anything to do with your business, plug it into predictive models, see if it's relevant to predicting your future business, and if it's not, get rid of it and move on. That's the fast, that's the real time. And when you do find signals that matter to your organization, you want to be able to take those signals as they come into your organization and instantly react through real-time analytics. And this is how you build a set of new signals, by finding all the ones that don't matter, which you have to do. And through that process, you will find the ones that tremendously matter to your organization. And then you can leverage those new signals in things like demand planning, or in things like real-time reporting, whatever kind of application that may be. But this is our goal. Our goal is to do all of this. Now, of course, the question really is, well, you know, how do we do that? And I think there's a couple ways that we can do that. First of all, and this is the SAP part of the equation. We've been talking about big data in somewhat of an abstract form to this point. I believe firmly that every single customer on the planet needs a single platform, a big data platform, that can deliver a big data solution across 5 key dimensions. Number 1 is going deep for the very, very complex questions on granular data. Number 2 is it has to be broad. It has to be able to suck in more than just one type of data. It can't just be SAP data or Oracle data or Microsoft. It has to be unstructured, structured, semi-structured. It has to deliver this in real time. It can't just be that you're pulling data in. And I find this a little, I always have a little bit of fun with folks when I talk about Hadoop, where I get taken through this process where they take data, they're loading it into Hadoop through some complex process, and then in order to query it, they're working with some MapReduce developers, and then they're loading it into a Hive cluster, and then you're able to query it. And to me, that doesn't equal real time. It only equals real time as long as you exactly know the question you're going to ask. The fourth element is it needs to be high speed. This needs to have an incredibly fast response time on any single query that you could throw at the system. And lastly, it has to be simple. You can't go through this complex intergalactic data warehousing approach of tons of pre-aggregates and tons of data preparation and tons of data tuning and indices and all kinds of fun stuff. It has to be simple for the IT organization to support it in order for end users to absolutely love it. So those are some of the necessary dimensions of big data that you need to be effective when you work with big data. And I believe that SAP absolutely has the solution to this, and that is called SAP Hana. SAP Hana, in my estimation, my point of view, it is the modern technology platform for modern business applications. And you say, well, why? Why is HANA the solution for me? Why would I use that in the context of big data? Why not just Hadoop and some simple analytic tool? And I'll share with you why. And the reason why is you actually need to have just a short trip in the Wayback Machine here to 30 years ago when corporate or real, what you could almost call the modern or the beginnings of modern business applications started. So we're going to go take a brief walk down memory lane here for just a few minutes. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to look back 30 years. So if you look at 30 years ago, and this is what I'm doing, is I'm going to attempt to explain SAP HANA to you and why I believe it's a solution for big data by covering how business applications have evolved over the last 30 years. I promise this won't take more than a minute or two. But if you rewind the clock to 30 years ago, we were all incredibly excited when a business application, we could go into that business application and we could look up what one of our customers purchased from us. So we could say, did you purchase a pair of jeans? A very simple question. And there was a product, a commercial off-the-shelf database that provided that capability. 30 years ago, that was all the rage. People were very excited about the ability to get a commercial off-the-shelf database, put it underneath a business application where an end user could go in and type in, show me yesterday's sales, and boom, it would come up. Truly mind-blowing that it was an off-the-shelf technology. But as human beings and people do, we got quickly bored with that. We wanted to know more than just, well, did you or did you not buy a pair of jeans? We wanted to analyze this information. What we wanted to do was we wanted to look at, well, I don't just want to know if you bought a pair of jeans. I want to know how many pairs of jeans you purchased as a customer. We wanted to analyze the data. Now, all of you know this capability today is business intelligence. That's what this analysis capability has become. But the reality is that from 30 years ago to about 20 years ago, we as business users, we evolved. We wanted more than just to know, did you buy a pair of jeans? We wanted to know, how many pairs did you buy? Over what period of time? We wanted to analyze the data. Now, as human beings go, we got bored with that very quickly, and we wanted to know more. We wanted to be able to predict. We didn't just want to know, did you buy a pair of jeans, or how many did you buy? We wanted to know how many pairs of jeans might you buy. And that was a big breakthrough, because now Modern business applications 10 years ago, well, you needed to have a database, and you needed to have analytic capability, and you needed to have predictive and planning and forecasting, this predictive capability built into it. And then, of course, if you fast forward to today, we live in the age of big data, the age of social information, right? This is the world we live in, and now we need to sense and understand sentiment. And what I mean by that is, whereas with a database you need to know, did you buy something, a pair of jeans? With the analytics capability, you wanted to know how much did you buy. With predictive, how much might you buy? And with sensing, we need to understand, how do you feel about that purchase? Here's the whole point of all of this. The point is that a modern business application today, what we expect all of this, all of it. But here's the catch, the catchy part, is today, and every single one of you on this call knows this, is you get one of these capabilities from different companies. You get the database from one company. You get the analysis capability from another, like a BI vendor. You get the predictive from yet another company, and the sensing, the meaning, the sentiment analysis from yet another. And SAP asks a simple question, and that is why? Why do you have to get these from all of these different companies? Think about what you're doing. Every time if you have 4 vendors, you're pulling out the data, copying it, and putting it somewhere else, and then pulling it out and copying it again, and putting it somewhere else, and pulling it out and copying it again, and putting it somewhere. That is a waste of everybody's time. It's a royal waste of your time and mine. What we need is a breakthrough platform, a single platform. In this case, it's what we call HANA. These capabilities are what we call real-time services that all come inside of SAP HANA. HANA is not just one thing. If you had asked me 18 months ago what HANA is versus today, 18 months ago, because I didn't understand HANA, I would have told you, yeah, it's a database. But as I've grown to understand HANA, as I've seen our customers deploy it, as we've expanded the technology, we know that HANA has all of these engines. HANA has a database engine. HANA has an analytic engine. HANA has a predictive engine, and HANA has a sentiment analysis engine. Oh, by the way, all of these run 100% in memory. I don't mean solid-state disk. I don't mean on a slow spinning disk. I mean it runs in a computer's RAM, the fastest part of its operating model. We've eliminated the need for disk in HANA. That is an extraordinary breakthrough, because what we're able to do is take these services, the database, the analysis, the predictive, the sensing, and deliver those to you in real time. So things that took you days take literally minutes, and things that took you minutes take seconds. In fact, things that take you hours take seconds, because HANA can deliver all of these advanced calculation, analytic, predictive capabilities in real time through its in-memory architecture. The point of all this is pretty straightforward. The point is to say is that we believe that HANA is the modern technology platform for today's and tomorrow's modern business challenges and opportunities. And anyone on this phone call, I mean, you certainly can continue to live in the model of, getting a database from one company, an analytic tool from another, a predictive from another, a sense from another, and if you wanted to add a business planning capability. But if you're building a business application and you need these capabilities, my question to you, no matter what size your data, no matter what shape your data, no matter what the volume, no matter what the variety, no matter what the velocity, the question is, why not HANA? It doesn't mean don't use Hadoop. It doesn't mean don't use whatever platform that you might be using today to store big data. But it does mean that there is a better way to store, there's a better way to analyze, predict, and sense meaning all in one package. And as I said before, sure, I can go out and cobble this from 4 or 5 vendors, but that is not breaking with the past. That is just that's just prolonging it. And I believe that now is the time for us to change. So I have a few comments to summarize here. Take just a couple more minutes, and I may end a minute or a couple minutes early, but I want to share with you my overall point of view here. We talked a lot today about looking for new signals. Now, I believe that you really are going to, as a company, have to invest in people, at least someone that helps you look for those new signals. We are in a world where if your company doesn't have a chief data officer or doesn't have a data scientist, someone that, A, on the left hand, is an expert in terms of, well, what data is available to our company to take advantage of, and B, is scouring those sources of information, looking for those golden nuggets, those breakthrough nuances that will help your company run itself more efficiently and effectively. I think we're missing the boat. So my first challenge for everybody on this call, my first challenge is look for that data scientist. Look for that chief data officer. If you don't have one, I strongly encourage you to get one. The second thing is to build a big data framework, or a data framework, we'll start there, is to help adopt things like volume, variety, and velocity as characteristics of data that will help you properly look at information, properly classify it so that you can decide, well, do we really need to store all of this information when in fact probably need to store the more valuable pieces of information? Again, using that example of you've been listening to this call probably in the same spot for the last 45 minutes or so. And I would argue that if you're in the same spot, the two most valuable data points is the one at the beginning and the one at the end, not all the ones in the middle. Now, you could probably find an exception to that. In fact, I'm sure I'll get I'm getting a tweet right now with someone finding an exception to that. So I appreciate that exception. So we talked a little bit about that. We also talked about how the need to take this data and look at it through 5 dimensions, real time being one of those dimensions, looking at the data deeply, looking at it in a broad context, looking for meaning within the data through structured and unstructured and semi-structured. So we talked at a broad level about that, and I made one argument or put a supposition forward here at the end, which is I believe that in addition to many of the big data investments that you either have made or will make, that SAP HANA can absolutely be a core part of that and should be a core part of that. And first and foremost, I believe that's the case because of how broad HANA is. HANA gives you the ability to buy less but do more, number one. Number two is to address the broader set of needs across the database services, the analytics services, the predictive services, and lastly, the sensing or sentiment services. Those are the core or key tenets of a modern business application. Those are the core tenets. And HANA delivers that. And we also talked about the fact that HANA being an in-memory model or in-memory platform for you to do all of this. Now, I can guarantee you in-memory is one of the most abused terms on the planet today. The bottom line is this, is that you need to look for a broad platform, as HANA is, that does many things, not just analysis, not just database services, not just sensing or sentiment, not just analytic. It does all of those. And oh, by the way, eliminates disk from the model. Every enterprise application 10 years from now, every single enterprise application will operate, every new one, I believe, will operate in memory. They absolutely will. I believe that that will be the case for many enterprise applications 5 years from now. And the challenge for, my challenge to all of you is why not? Why not move your enterprise applications to an in-memory model where you're not just analyzing the data or storing the data, you're operating your business applications in real time as well. And certainly my belief is that HANA is the platform to do that. So in this world of big data that we live in, my core belief is that the companies that will not just survive but thrive will be the ones that have a thirst for new business signals in all of this noise. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you today. It's been my distinct pleasure. This is just a fantastic forum, and certainly speaking on behalf of SAP, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you, to share a few thoughts with you around big data, the new signals out there, and I'll encourage you to do a couple things. First of all, if you're interested in more of the big data commentary, you can always go to experiencesaphana.com or just saphana.com. You can certainly tweet me at nstephenlucas is my handle anytime you'd like. I love talking with people and getting new ideas. I'd encourage you all to read the Tech America Big Data Commission publication that was recently published. While it is focused on how the federal government and agencies can make use of it, there's just a tremendous wealth of information from companies like SAP, IBM, Red Hat, education institutes like NC State, and the list goes on that were just really super exciting, and I encourage you all to take a look at that. You can download that at techamerica.org, I believe is the website. And again, just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to speak to you today. It's been my distinct pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hey, Steve, thank you. Would you have 5 minutes for one or two questions, Steve?
Absolutely.
Steve, the feedback has been outstanding. Wow, thank you for Steve Lucas's insightful presentation. Awesome content. I could go on, Steve, so thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are. As I think you guys, the attendees online, have listened, there's a lot of content there, and we've had a lot of questions come in. If I may, Steve, I'll ask one of the detailed questions that have come in, then also, if you may just give us a brief insight into the next 12 months for SAP Hana, and specifically around perhaps implementation and any challenges we should look to overcome. Another comment, really innovative, groundbreaking, awesome presentation. It goes on, Steve. So one of the questions I've got for you, Steve, is, if you bear with me, is SAP going to move completely from SAP NetWeaver platform, ERP, to SAP HANA completely?
Oh boy, well, whoever asked that question just cuts to the chase. I like that one. So first, let me answer that maybe in two parts. I think first and foremost is to be clear, SAP has a broader database strategy that we call the real-time data platform, and HANA is at the core of that. We also include our satellite solutions like Sybase ASE, Sybase IQ, and Sybase SQL Anywhere as our relational, analytic, and small footprint databases. Clearly, there's some overlap there. So we have some companies that use both, some companies that only use HANA. But for customers that are, let's just say, SAP customers today, so perhaps you own the business suite or ERP or a component thereof like CRM. The first question is, I'm kind of breaking it down a bit. Will those solutions run on top of HANA? Yes, unequivocally so. So our intention is that if you have a business suite application, if you have CRM or HR, and you're running that application on top of, let's just say, a database that doesn't come from SAP today, we'll call that, maybe brand O, for example, then would you be able to move off of that onto HANA? Absolutely. Would your business suite inherit the benefits of a massive performance improvement? Absolutely. Would you get all of the capabilities that HANA brings to the table? Absolutely. So you get all of that, for your suite as well. So that is definitely happening. On the NetWeaver front, there's a lot of interesting things going on. In case you're unaware, we actually launched a cloud version of NetWeaver called NetWeaver Cloud Edition, or NetWeaver Neo is what the cool kids call it, I guess. And it's NetWeaver in the cloud running on top of HANA. And it allows you to build cloud-based applications in Java, by the way, develop them in Java, and then connect those cloud-based applications. So if you wanted to do like a mobile inventory quote application for mobile devices in the cloud, you build it in Java and connect it back to your core ERP system. We actually have that technology in ramp up right now and available for people to try out. So my gosh, there's a lot of ways that you can touch HANA. We also have, for any size company, we have HANA solutions for our B1 customers that start at 2,000 euro for HANA, and obviously go up from there for much larger companies. But the point is that HANA is here, it's real, SAP is committed. This is our flagship, both product and database, and I can unequivocally say to you, every single product at SAP that we make that requires a database or a platform over time will run on HANA. That doesn't mean that we're abandoning third-party products or won't support them. Of course we will. SAP believes in being open. We think that that's fair. But absolutely every product at SAP will have HANA as a core and first option.
Fabulous. Thanks for that, Steve. Steve, I know how busy you are because we've been speaking with your PAs. You've been on planes, off planes. I know how precious your time is. So with that, Steve, the feedback has been absolutely outstanding. And for those of you who've asked, we will be asking for permission to distribute elements or entire presentations for most Steves today. So Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure, and I would love to do this again, and I hope everyone has a great rest of the week.
Yeah, we will do. We've had over 1,200 registrants for today's webinar, Steve, so your message is going out not only to those 1,200 but virally as well, so thank you once again, Steve.
My pleasure. Take care.
Take care, Steve. Bye-bye.